So today is day 14 of the solo Atlantic crossing, and today we're gonna talk about safety on board. I think there's an important distinction to be made between safety before something happens and safety after something happens. I think those are two separate things and we'll talk about them separately. But yeah, let's start about the things that you can do before something even happens. So this is about making sure your boat is in a proper state to actually go sailing, especially alone, because if something happens, you are the only one there that can do something. And some tasks are really hard if you're alone, like going up the mast all alone on an ocean. Even like with two people, it's really dangerous and hard. Alone, it's impossible, I would say, or even like a really bad idea. So there are some things you really need to think about, like, is my boat in a completely ready state? Go over all your sails. Like, I had my sails brought to the sailmaker. There were some small repairs that were made, some stitching had to be redone. Do a really good rig check. And I think the state of mind should be, when you go over your boat, is finding the error. Like, there is something wrong with your boat, finding it, instead of just looking if everything is fine. Because if you're actually looking for the error and you're only satisfied if you either found something wrong with your boat, or you made sure that you've gone over everything a million times, that it really is good because you've been over a million times. That is kind of the state of mind you want to be in. I did a rig check before I was leaving, and the rig has been replaced before I left the Netherlands. But still, I found a broken stay, which you don't really expect. But yeah, I found a broken stay. There was also like a little tear in one of the cups, which apparently they don't change out if you change out your whole rig. So yeah, those had to be changed out, and I could still do that in Gran Canaria. If those things would have happened, well, if only would have found out during the trip, a stay with one tear in it will probably stay up, but if something would have happened with the rig, it's a big problem. So yeah, go over all the major systems of your boat. So your autopilot, your rudder, your sails, your rigging, all your electronics, your engine, your keel, all your seacocks, like, have those been replaced? What do they look like? I have a second autopilot, which is the hydrovane, which, especially if you're sailing solo, is really important, because without an autopilot, I'm kind of fucked. Like, it's gonna take a long day. Like, I could steer all day, try to trim the sails, but sailing downwind, the boat doesn't really balance that well. Most boats don't really balance that well. Upwind you can balance the boat quite well, so it sails itself for a long time. But yeah, downwind, you will be mostly steering. So you could steer for like 18 hours a day, and then heave to for the other 8 hours to get some sleep, make some food, and yeah, go again. But that would take a long time. So yeah, for me, going solo, it was really important to have a second autopilot and also a non-electrical autopilot, because if I get hit by lightning or something happens with my electrical system, the hydrovane will still work. Yeah, so those are some really important parts before you are actually going. Then before something even happens. In my opinion, it's also really important that you actually know your boat, know what's on there, know all the systems, know how they work, know how they interact, and know what can go wrong. I see more and more cruisers that even like a simple engine maintenance, they hire someone to do that. Yeah, I think it's really important to be able to do all the stuff yourself, because you will be in a position at some moment in time where you will have to do it yourself, and then it's nice that you already did it in a marina where you can even ask some help, but you should know how all the systems work and how you should change stuff. So I think self-reliancy and being able to fix stuff, having the right tools on board, is really important. So while you're sailing, it's also important to keep on looking for problems or stuff that can happen and trying to fix them before something happens. So I like to go through the mast every day, just to check out the rigging. So I look up the mast, go all the way to the top, check out if all the stays are still correct, if the sails are not rubbing against something. I look at all the attachment points of the rig and see if nothing is chafing or getting loose. So I look at everything, look at all the lines, and see if nothing is chafing against anything. Yeah, I can also move the halyards sometimes. So once every day or a couple of days, I move the halyards a little bit. So just so at the top they're not constantly pressing on the same bit. So that's also to remove chafe. and I just go over the whole deck to see like, can I find something that's wrong or needs some attention. Something that's also really important is jack lines. I see a lot of people, like jack lines are the lines that you attach so you can put your clip on so you don't go overboard. Most boats have a jack line going all the way out from front to back. That one will have so much stretch that even if you hang on it, you will be going overboard. Then you have about a meter, 1.5 meter of your lanyard. You'll be in the water and you'll be hanging on the side of the boat. If you're with two people, maybe you get in again. If you're alone, it will be very hard to get in again. So yeah, my opinion, the lines should go to the mast, so you go to the center of the boat, away from the side, and then from the mast I have one going all the way forwards, also centered over the boat. It keeps me away as much as possible from the sides of the boat where it can be dangerous. And I also like to clip into hard points, so on the mast I clip into a hard point. In the cockpit I have some hard points as well where I can clip in if the weather gets rough. So those are, in my opinion, really important things to all have in check before you even go. These are preventative measures, so the risk of something happening is a lot lower. Then of course you need to have stuff that helps you in the case that something happens. It's not never a guarantee that you will be helped or that you will survive because of this stuff, but it will give you better chances of survival. One thing, of course, that is really important is a good life jacket. I have a nice Spinlock 6D. It fits me really well, it sits nicely, and in the life jacket I have a PLB, so that is kind of like a personal locating beacon. So when that one goes off, you have to put it on manually though. If I go in the water, the life jacket inflates, my PLB comes out, it's attached to the life jacket of course, and I can set it off and it sends out through satellites a GPS position where I am and that I'm in an emergency. So I opened up the life jacket so you can see. So here's the PLB. That one has to be activated manually. And here is the MOB AIS. That one goes off automatically once the life jacket inflates. It's also important, of course, to check your life jacket. So inflate it once a year or how often you feel like it. Check out if everything is working. Also, if you have like a light on there, if you have a hood on there, which is really important because if you're out there in waves, a lot of people, well, it's called secondary drowning. You don't drown when you fall in the water, you drown because you get too much water into your face and yeah, you swallow it. Check the CO2 cartridge that's in there, weigh it, and yeah, check if everything is all right. The EPIRB, it's an emergency position indicating radio beacon, so well, the name kind of says it already. It puts out your position through a radio signal to a satellite to the emergency services. That way they know there's an emergency, something happened with a vessel or with the persons on board, they need help. The EPIRB is the biggest standard of emergency equipment that you should have on board, in my opinion. The other big thing is of course a sinking boat. It doesn't happen that often actually, and most people think, especially non-sailors, think it happens due to storms, but storms very rarely sink boats. It mostly happens due to either hitting something, can be a container, can be a whale, can be something that causes a big hole in your boat, so that kind of sinks your boat. The other thing is a fire on board. The boat is made out of plastic, but even if you have a steel boat or a wooden boat or an aluminium boat, a fire on board can be really dangerous and can go really quick. Because even if you have a steel boat, your hoses will still be some kind of plastic. So they will be melting and yeah, probably you will have a big problem and a lot of water coming in. And a lot of fires happen due to electrical reasons. So it's really important. I work as a boat electrician as well. And sometimes when I get on board on boats, the first thing I ask is, where's your fire extinguisher? Because a lot of boats have no fusing on anything, very vague wiring with many things connected to each other and just overall dangerous. If something happens, it will cause a fire. And if you don't have a good fire extinguisher and are there quickly, your boat will go up in flames. So yeah, really important is a big fire extinguisher. I have a big 6 kilo fire extinguisher on board and 2 smaller ones. because being able to put out the fire really quickly is important. So then if your boat is actually sinking, I have a life raft, so I have a 4-person life raft. Don't use a life raft that's too big, because if it's too big it catches a lot of wind. If you're only in there a 6-person life raft or an 8-person life raft and you're only in there with 2 people, you have the risk of it flipping due to high winds. But most of the time you won't be in the life raft during high winds, because you won't be in the life raft because of a storm. You will be in the life raft because your boat is sinking due to hitting something or a fire on board. So yeah, going into the life raft, the rule is step up into your life raft. Don't step into your life raft. Only if your boat is really sinking, step up into your life raft. Because if your boat is not actually sinking, it is the better place to be almost always. They have found numerous boats floating around and couldn't find the people anymore because they stepped into the life raft and they were never found anymore. So only step up into your life raft once it's the last chance you have. So in the grab bag I have multiple things. I of course have my boat papers and my passport. I have water, I have food, I have some thermal blankets, which I won't really need in this kind of weather, but still they're good to have. I have the EPIRB in there, so I don't have to grab it separately, and I have my cards. Because water of course is one of the most important things, I also have some 20-liter jerry cans in the lazarette next to where the life raft is. So we'll throw those overboard as well, with a line attached to them to the life raft, so I can hold them in, because water is gonna be the limiting factor. Like, you can go a long time without food. Without water it's gonna be tough. Although rescue times in these areas where there's kind of a lot of shipping shouldn't be that much longer than a couple days, so it should be good, but still it's nice to have enough water on board. As you can see, I also have a Starlink on board. I don't really call this safety equipment, it's more a luxury. It allows me to download the weather and be in contact with people. But yeah, the weather is nice to know what kind of wind is coming, but on a kind of slow boat you're not outrunning any weather anyway, so the wind that will be there is the wind that you're gonna have to handle with. So even if the Starlink stops working, like, I'll be fine. I just my parents don't know where I am, but that will be fine. So yeah, it's more a luxury. I have the standard Roam unlimited subscription on it, and I have to pay per gigabyte. So I pay €2.31 per gigabyte when I'm out on the ocean. When you're further than 12 miles away from shore, you have to put Roam Priority on, and then you have data. Well, you pay per gigabyte, but it works really well. Then one last thing I have on board is this big emergency bilge pump. It's an electrical one, so still the electrical system needs to work, but it's for all the bilge pumps except for the manual one, which I also have in the cockpit. But yeah, this is a big one that will put out a lot of water, a big hose that I can drop out the cockpit, and yeah, that is a last emergency one. Some last thoughts is also, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. If you only have one fresh water tank, don't have all your fresh water just in that tank. If, for example, just the lid on the deck starts leaking and you get salt water in there, all your water will be salty and you can't drink it anymore. So make sure you have either multiple tanks or you have some water separate from your tanks. I have both. I have 3 tanks and I also have separate water, just in the big tins you can buy at the supermarket. But yeah, make sure you don't put all your eggs in one basket water-wise. Continuing on water, also a water maker. A water maker is a great luxury on anchor. I have one. I have some experience with it. I know a lot of other people. Water makers are one of the most notorious parts on a boat. A lot of times they stop working, they either go into a fault, or I know a lot of people who have a water maker on board, but they're working on it to make it work again. And you don't really know when it stops working. So once you're sailing out on the ocean and you have a water maker, don't trust it. You still have to have all the water you need for all the people on board to get to the other side at all times. Don't use up all your water and be like, we have a water maker, we can make new ones. We can make new water. Or what is something that can happen is that it emits salt water. Instead of fresh water, something goes bad in the membrane, it starts outputting salt water. If you put that straight into your tanks, all your water is contaminated. So make sure you always have enough water separate from your tanks for drinking for all the people on board. If you like this video, please subscribe and follow along. I will try to upload a new one every day for as long as the crossing takes. Enjoy!